Welcome to The Explainer. If you've ever traveled, you've definitely stood there, tapped your credit card, and asked yourself one incredibly frustrating question. Why on earth do airports charge so much? Well, today we're investigating the hidden economics of the airport terminal as a completely closed marketplace. We're going to unpack the architecture of this captive market, look at the intense regulatory battles, the carefully engineered passenger psychology, and the hidden revenue streams that explain exactly what is going on behind the scenes. Okay, let's dive right into this by starting with a simple mystery. Picture this. A passenger buys a sandwich in the city. A few hours later, they see the exact same sandwich inside the airport terminal. I mean, it's made with the same bread, the same ingredients, packaged in the exact same little plastic wrapper. But the price has magically tripled the moment they walked through those terminal doors. It goes from 150 rupees out in the city to a whopping 450 rupees at the gate. To figure out why this happens, we need to map out the invisible walls of this captive market. We really need to look past the planes and understand the core business model of the building itself.
Section 1. Invisible Airport Revenue Streams Beyond Landing Fees. To solve this case, we first have to understand that modern airports aren't just, transportation hubs. They are massive, incredibly sophisticated revenue-generating enterprises. They rival major corporations in their operational complexity, and their income relies on a lot more than just airplanes taking off and landing.
You might think the obvious stuff, the aeronautical revenue, is the whole story, but actually it only makes up about 54% of an average commercial airport's income. Sure, when a major airline lands a massive Boeing 747 at a huge hub like Atlanta or LA, they pay a landing fee, usually somewhere between $3,000 and $8,000. But those fees are highly regulated. Combined with aircraft parking and passenger facility charges, they're barely half the financial picture. The rest of the money, roughly 46%, comes from what's called non-aeronautical revenue. Basically, the entire commercial ecosystem surrounding air travel, retail, dining, parking, all of it. This represents the fastest-growing, highly scalable, and by far the most heavily optimized income stream for an airport. Because aeronautical fees are often capped by competitive pressures, airports completely rely on this commercial ecosystem to actually drive their financial growth. The crucial point here is that things we take for granted, like parking, retail space, and advertising, generate literally hundreds of millions of dollars. A large airport serving 40 million passengers can pull in $50 to $150 million from parking alone, and another 20 to 50 million just from the advertising plastered on the walls. When you stack all these non-aeronautical streams together, mega hubs are pushing well over $1 billion in annual revenue. Section 2. The economics of concessions, stacking the costs. Let's move down to the terminal floor and see exactly how this builds the price of our 450 rupee sandwich. Because the vendor selling you that lunch is operating in one of the most expensive and tightly controlled retail environments on Earth. So instead of just simple corporate greed, you're actually paying for stacked constraints. First up, the vendor pays absolute premium rent for that terminal space. Second, they often have a revenue-sharing concession agreement, meaning they might have to hand over an additional 10% of their daily revenue directly to the airport. Then add in the massive logistical overhead of moving every single ingredient through strict security checkpoints. The base price of that sandwich has to skyrocket just for the vendor to break even. Section 3. Single till versus dual till, the regulatory battle. But what does the airport actually do with all this sandwich and parking profit? This is where the hidden economics get incredibly fascinating because it triggers a massive, ongoing regulatory battle between the airports and the airlines. This brilliantly illustrates the great regulatory divide, the battle between the single till and the dual till. It sounds academic, but it's huge. Airlines desperately want a single till approach. Under single till, the profits from your overpriced sandwich and parking are pooled together to subsidize the cost of the runways, which directly lowers the fees airlines have to pay. But airports, they fight tooth and nail for a dual till system. They want to keep commercial profits completely separate, forcing those aeronautical fees to cover all infrastructure costs. That way, the airport gets to keep the retail profits for themselves, or use them for fancy facility expansions. When we scan the economic data, we see the danger of what academics call double marginalization. If both the airport and the airline are operating as monopolies with strong market power, they basically just stack their markups on top of each other. The airport charges a high infrastructure fee, and the airline just passes that fee plus its own markup right onto you, the passenger. This creates a massive welfare loss for the consumer, driving ticket prices way up and pushing passenger volumes down. However,
Under a single-till system, a fascinating economic phenomenon kicks in called the complementarity effect. Because the airport makes so much money on concession services, they are actually heavily incentivized to lower their aeronautical landing fees. Why? Well, cheaper airline tickets bring in a higher volume of passengers. And more passengers means more people trapped in the terminal buying highly profitable sandwiches, coffees, and duty-free goods. The retail profits essentially buy down the cost of the runway.
Section 4. The final price tag. Engineering dwell time. Which brings us to the modern strategy for maximizing the value of the captive market we're all sitting in. Airports have realized that passenger psychology is the ultimate key to driving that non-aeronautical revenue. Today, an average commercial airport makes a profit of about $7 per passenger. But here is the catch. Over the last several years, the non-aeronautical revenue per person has actually been declining by almost 5%. People are stressed, they're rushing to their gates, and frankly, they just aren't spending as much as they used to.
To fix this, airports know they absolutely have to adapt. Modern travelers are digital natives. We're totally used to the frictionless experience of ride-hailing apps and seamless food delivery, and we demand that exact same convenience when we travel. If an airport is stressful, confusing, or chaotic, passengers simply freeze up and won't spend money.
So, airports have initiated what we can call the digital squeeze. First up, eliminate navigation anxiety using digital wayfinding and sleek mobile apps. If you know exactly how long the security line is and exactly how many minutes it takes to walk to your gate, your anxiety vanishes. Second, without that anxiety, you confidently explore the terminal instead of just sitting frozen at your gate. And third, airports use proximity marketing and mobile food pre-ordering to drive highly targeted spending exactly when you happen to walk past a restaurant or a premium lounge.
And the result of all this? A staggering 33% of your time at the airport is now spent on revenue-generating activities. Yep, a whole third of your time. Airports are using advanced data analytics to track passenger flow, completely turning your wait time into optimized shopping time. They perfectly curate the retail mix, ensuring maximum revenue per square foot, based entirely on where you naturally tend to walk. So, what happens to prices when you can't simply walk somewhere else? Well, we return to the primary clue of our investigation: the invisible walls of the security checkpoint that separate you from the free market. Once you are past security, you literally cannot walk down the street to find a cheaper cafe. The high price is just the mathematical result of the environment. The airport didn't make the sandwich better. That 450 rupees you pay is funding those stacked premium rents, the 10% revenue sharing agreements, the enhanced logistical costs, and those intense dual-till regulatory pressures of funding multi-billion-dollar infrastructure. It made your alternatives disappear. You aren't just paying for a meal, you are paying the toll of a perfectly designed claustrophobic economic pressure chamber. A space meticulously engineered with digital wayfinding and retail analytics to maximize your dwell time and extract exactly $7 of profit from your wallet. And that brings us to the end. Case solved. We've successfully mapped the hidden economics of the airport terminal. That concludes our explainer for today, leaving us to wonder just how long it will be before our seamless digital convenience completely erases our free market choices altogether. Next time you tap your card at the gate, ask yourself, are you a traveler or just a highly optimized metric of non-aeronautical revenue? Thanks for joining me. And as always, keep questioning the world around you.